The 8A game time is set, and we're going to talk about that. And also, Bama lost out on a recruit to Michigan. Is this an NIL hit again, where the Wolverines are taking advantage of resources that maybe Alabama doesn't have, or are we looking into it too much? We're going to talk about that and more right here on the Cover Crimson Show with Clint Lamb and Mick Gillispie. And you guys can tell this isn't my home studio, but we're coming to you today direct from Starbucks. So I got a coffee too. Let's go. All right, there he is, Clint Lamb, Mick Gillispie. Guys, like, subscribe, thumbs up. Thank you for hanging out with us. Brought to you by mybookie.ag. And, I don't want to get off on the wrong foot talking about the Bear stuff. So we'll kind of get into that here in a second. But the 8A game time has been set for noon on April the 12th. For some reason, Clint, I already thought that was when the game was going to be, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we just assumed that.
No. It was announced, I think, in January that it was going to be April 12th. We did not have a time, and so now we have noon. But to me, one of the big storylines is that it's not going to be televised. And considering, how much the 8A game has kind of become one of those things where a lot of fans, a lot of them are going to want to go to Tuscaloosa and watch. But a lot of them also are going to, want to watch on TV. You no longer have that option. Now, I don't think that's that big of a deal because, I think the biggest thing is maintaining as close to a regular 8A game as possible. I think it might be fairly similar to last year. We don't know that definitively, but if it's not going to be televised, that kind of solves a lot of the issue as far as putting your players on display for other programs to kind of get a gauge on and maybe try to poach them. You actually got to send resources to Tuscaloosa to watch that game live, and there's several 8A games going on or spring games going on that Saturday. So it's difficult. But, I understand fans' frustrations with it, but at least we're getting some sort of spring game.
It's insane to me that it's gotten to the point now where you're that concerned about other teams poaching your players that you don't even want to put your games on television. And I feel like we're moving to where something has to be done there. And, Coach DeBoer was even kind of talking about having some kind of revenue sharing system or whatever. It is so weird that we've always loved the 8A game. It's always been such a big part of the spring, getting to go out and see the guys play and almost a sigh of relief that it's not on television.
Yeah. It's just, I think right now it's just everything that college football has lost. That's the biggest issue. This is just like the most recent thing. But like I said, I think the biggest aspect of this is that they are having some semblance of a spring game. If you're a fan and you're able to go, I'm hoping at least that you'll be able to see, some of the depth players, some of the competitions that are going on, right tackle, quarterback, off-ball linebacker, depending on, I guess it's going to be Nikhai Hill-Green and Justin Jefferson, but maybe for, LB3, the Wolf position, what does that look like? What does Jamarian Latham look like making his transition there? Is he working ahead of Quay Russaw? Is it Quay Russaw with the ones? Where's Yanze Pierre? Where's Keon Keeley? Like, there's still a lot that you can gather from a game like that. You just got to go in person. And it's also unfortunate because, you're not going to be sitting up there filming the whole thing, even though I guess it's possible someone could and post it on YouTube like they have with some of those open practices. But it's not something that you can, go back and watch later. But being able to watch it live, take some notes, kind of like we do when we're able to kind of view the open portions of practice, I think that'll be something that will still be valuable. It just won't be the same that it's always been.
I don't know if I'm supposed to be excited or disappointed, but like I said, the game being at noon, I do like that, because you get out there and then you have the rest of the day to do stuff, and for those of you guys that are coming in from out of town, you can go to dinner and it's not when it's in the afternoon, by the time the game's over, and then the second half, a lot of times it felt like you're watching guys that are like walk-ons and stuff. But those, I can remember like some of those games, like the first couple quarters being pretty intense, and exciting.
Well, I mean, there's a competitive element for it. I mean, when you've been kind of banging heads all spring, you're ready to kind of put all the hard work you've put in, especially those young guys. Like this is their kind of coming out party to Alabama fans. Like you'll get to see them actually in a somewhat of a game-like environment. We've seen freshmen in the past, Ajayi Hall, who obviously never turned out to be much at Alabama, but we saw what he was capable of in that game, and kind of that's what had made him a 5-star recruit coming out of high school. It really wasn't anything on the field that ever affected him. It was really off the field that was the big issue. But there's been other players who have stood out. John Mechie had a phenomenal A-Day game.
Oh yeah.
There's been several, and so you can still enjoy this process, kind of see the growth of the team, see where transfer portal guys, how they're looking. It's just unfortunate that we've reached a point where you're trying to do whatever you can to manage your roster and maintain your roster. You're always looking over your shoulder, and that's compared to where it was just a couple of years ago. That's an unfortunate development.
That's a sad thing for the game, but I mean, I feel like at some point they're going to have to do something, and I guess we can kind of transition into Bear McWhorter. I thought the guy was an Alabama fan. It felt like it was going to be a lock for the Tide, and Michigan comes in again, and all of a sudden now Michigan, with all of this money, and we keep hearing about it, they bought Ty Haywood, and now they're buying another offensive lineman. And I mean, and not to take anything away from their recruiting, but out of nowhere, all of a sudden, it's like they get some boosters and they're a force on the recruiting trail.
Yeah, they've done pretty well with offensive linemen. They've always been able to run the football pretty well. Sharon Moore has an offensive line background. He's very well respected in that realm. I'm sure NIL plays a part as well. I don't know how much it played with Bear McWhorter. He didn't really seem like the kind of guy who that would really affect Ty Haywood. He was pretty well known that NIL was going to play a massive factor with him. But with Bear, this is a guy who was named after Paul Bear Bryant. I mean, he grew up an Alabama fan. So this one, I was on this show, what was it, last week, maybe the week before, and I was really hyping up Bear McWhorter because I do really think he's a good player, and just because Alabama misses on him doesn't mean I'm going to change my tune and say, well, it's just a 3-star. Like he's not a 3-star in my mind. I think he's a much better player. I think Alabama views him as a much better player. They wanted him. They got other plans. They're really with this class, it's more of an offensive tackle focus because you don't know what's going to happen with Caden Proctor. He's going to be going into his 3rd season. If he has a good year, it is possible that he chooses to leave a year early. There are some guys, Jackson Lloyd's a guy they really like. Obviously, Wilkin Formby, he's continuing to battle it out and try to earn his way onto the field. Arkell Nugum, but really they're really short on offensive tackle numbers right now. And we've talked at length, including yesterday, about all the depth on the interior. So I don't think they were going to take a ton as far as the inside guys. And they already got Chris Booker, who I think is also a very underrated player. I said this last week as well when he committed, when I got around to actually diving into both of their tapes again, I think for Kalen DeBoer's offense and just, what you can kind of do with that premier athleticism, kind of like with Parker Brailsford, I actually probably liked Chris Booker a little bit more, but I also really liked Bear McWhorter. I mean, with the physicality, just the nastiness in which he plays. So I'm not going to try to sugarcoat this and say Alabama's going to be just fine. And I do think they have other plans, and I do think that they will be fine, but it's not like this wasn't a massive miss because he grew up a Bama fan, and they seem to be in really good shape with him until recently.
Well, and that kind of leads me over to Kalen DeBoer talking about the, kind of the regulation of college football. I mean, everyone kind of expects there to be some kind of revenue sharing system which would give football programs, around $15 million to share with players. I'm still confused on how this works. I mean, would you be able to make money on NIL after that? And would that really restrict how much money that because this is probably why you see Ohio State, Michigan trying to go out and buy as many guys as they can, because that you can do it right now. I think eventually, if they make a rule, they won't be allowed to do it, right? And honestly, like we missed on an opportunity to do this. Alabama, and I've said it over and over again, was not prepared for NIL because they didn't want to do it. And for that reason, we've been kind of behind the eight ball, and I knew that was going to happen because I kept hearing behind the scenes that Saban didn't want to be involved in it. And now, and I don't blame him. Look, I mean, he's the GOAT, but the schools that have gone, that either have big money, big pockets, like Ohio State bought the championship last year.
So what does everyone think that Nick Saban did with this? Does everybody think he took his ball and went home? Because, everybody claims that he paid all these players and stuff. And yet once it became legal, all of a sudden Nick Saban didn't want to participate. Because he never did it to the extent. I will say, I think every program, has some of that involved. I really do. And I don't think I'm not naive enough to think Alabama was above that. I just don't think that they were doing anything beyond what anybody else was doing that was giving Alabama some sort of competitive advantage. I just don't. No. And the fact that it became kind of a thing, and he is in full support of players getting paid, but he just wasn't really willing to embrace what it was becoming. And the reason he wasn't willing to embrace it is because he felt like it affected player mentality, player growth, wanting to create the best men. And if he was paying guys all along, why would he have? I mean, it would have been the same thing he always did.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I that's it. And when people were coming to him with the NILs and wanting to get involved in that, he just didn't feel comfortable with that. He didn't want to be involved in it. He didn't want them involved with the program, just the way he was. But the problem is that the other schools were like, hey, we'll take it. And I feel like that put Alabama behind the eight ball. And hopefully we get to the point again where there's a level playing field, or at least a semblance of a level playing field. And then all of a sudden you can win on having a great facility. You can win on having the best fans in the world. You can win on tradition. But my dad used to say it, Clint, I'm going to tell you, and it's true, money talks and bullshit walks. And if you don't have the money right now, that's the bottom line. And we're seeing guys that grew up loving Alabama, want to go to Alabama, dream to go to Alabama, going to Michigan. I mean, come on, man.
Well,
out of nowhere.
So I still don't fully understand how it's all going to operate. I really, I probably should, because of what we do for a living. But I hate the NIL side of it so much. I don't want to learn contracts. Like, that's the thing that's kind of, if you cover an NFL team, you got to know the salary cap pretty well. Like, I mean, who are they going to cut? How do they create money? You got to understand. It's like, I've never had any interest in that. I wouldn't ever have claimed to be a great math guy. But what I will say from my understanding is that it's going to be rev share, and everybody's going to get a part of that. It's going to put everybody on an equal playing field. But it's like Texas A&M today. It was announced that they had signed like a multimedia rights deal, a new one with like Playfly or something like that, which I don't fully know what that company is, but it's multimedia rights. So you'll see different things as far as how it's going to operate, because it was like $515 million over 15 years. So it was going to take their annual NIL from like 18 million to 32 or 34 million. And everybody's like freaking out over that number. The way that I think it's going to work is you won't have any of these backdoor shady NIL deals where boosters are going. What these people will act as is kind of an they're not NCAA, I guess we'll call them NIL clearinghouse type of situation, where there will be clean deals being funneled into that will then go to the players. So all this just, hey, just sign with Texas A&M and we'll hand you, $4 million. Like, that won't happen anymore. It will be a lot more regulated. It'll be a lot more clean, and that should absolutely help, because you can't just be pouring money in for nothing. These kids, I mean, it's got to be NIL, name, image, and likeness based. That's where it will help. But there will still be competitive advantages to an extent for certain schools that are able to negotiate those deals and get the right funding But Alabama's brand should help with a lot of that because you'll be able to connect, brand, massive brands, kind of like, was it Red Bull that Arch Manning signed a deal with? It's things like that. You'll see more of that because it'll be easier to negotiate and all that. Alabama's brand should take care of it on that front, but NIL will still play some sort of factor.
Yeah. And look, we would love to have some players come on this channel, and hang out with us. And I'm sure that there's somebody that would want to sponsor them to do that. So there's opportunities, and there's a lot of other people like us that would love to have the, players involved. I mean, not just Ryan Williams, but, guys like Cole Adams, guys like Latsier Brooks. I mean, who knows? You don't have to be the star to be able to come on and be interesting and worth hearing from, and I feel like that the players and I guess however all of this works could be easier to access to earn that money, and like right now, I mean, think about the value that Ryan Williams has, and I mean, like if he was really out there, like doing NIL, like if he was really out there pushing, I mean, he could be on commercials in this state. He's marketable. He's funny. People like him. There's it's like a star just presence that the guy has. So, and that's kind of on the other end of that scale. But I'd love to see, if they're going to do NIL, I'd love to see it done the way that it was supposed to be done. Not paying people to show up and play football, but you go out there and you build your brand and you earn
that. And that's what I think a lot of this is going to get cleaned up. I mean, the idea of, guys, I signed this NIL deal, or I'm getting paid this much. And it's like, okay, what are you doing for it? I mean, I'm playing football for it. What do you mean? Which is hard work, but that's not what it's intended for. This NIL clearinghouse type of function will have to approve things. It will be in a lot of ways the regulating body, kind of like the NCAA. They'll have a lot more as far as power is concerned to be able to make some of these decisions and enforce them. So it will clean up a lot of the shadiness of some of these deals. And I think what will kind of follow that is, how they deal with the transfer portal. Maybe you'll be able to sign players kind of to more contract type of situations where they got to stick around and you ain't got to worry about everybody on your roster bailing. I do think it's going to get fixed over a period of time, but right now it's been the Wild Wild West. Certain programs have spent a lot of money taking advantage of that. Ohio State bought themselves a national championship. Now, they were already in that conversation regardless. Like Ohio State's always in the conversation for a national championship for most years, but they were able to spend enough money to get themselves over the top. I don't think it will be designed in that way, really, for much longer, if any longer. And so once that gets taken care of, I think you will see more of a competitive balance on that front, which Kalen DeBoer's talked about. He feels like rev share, like he knows about all these things, the multimedia rights deals and, how that's going to play a factor, but he still feels really good about the rev sharing, creating more of a competitive balance. And that's kind of all you're looking for, because you want it to be that they deserve to get paid. It's really hard work. Their marketability is through the roof. The school makes a ton of money, way more than a college tuition off of them. I guarantee you that. And I mean, way more, but it's never deserved the sport was never designed, or really sports in general on the collegiate level was never designed to be about just the money. And for most athletes, it's kind of become that, but I think that period, they'll all get taken care of. It won't be this competitive, everybody fighting over everything. And I think that should fix at least part of it.
Hey, let's hope so. And I've said this before too, kind of on the other side of things, is when you're making $1 billion and the people that are generating the $1 billion aren't getting paid, there's a problem. Okay. And that's basically what Alabama's athletic department's worth. And you can say, well, they play all these other sports. Let me tell you something. Listen real close to me, guys. Football. That's what pays the bills. We go on this channel, I start talking basketball, the team was number one, and you don't watch. We put a basketball show on my channel, you don't watch. But we could talk football 365 days a year, and you're going to watch, because and they're going to put 100,000 people in a stadium, everybody paying $125 a ticket, right? Plus tax that they give you on top of that to buy the ticket. that money, to think that you're making $1 billion and the person that's out there generating the money is getting zero, it's a problem. Okay. And even if you paid them $30 million, you took $30 million and spread that out, that's still not that much. And that's what Ohio State did. I mean, when you think about it from a business standpoint, Clint, if we were making if this channel generated $1 billion, spending 30 million of that on us as talent, it seemed like that'd be a good check for us. But you know what I mean? AK said he's tired of losing to Michigan. Man, I know. It's like two big players. Actually, think about it. Justice Haynes went there too. We lost one of our best. Yeah, Damon Payne, one of our best defensive linemen. Those are not the Justice Haynes doesn't bother me as much as Damon Payne, because those interior linemen are so important, man. Getting after the quarterback, stopping the run, offensive linemen. So yeah, I mean it's an issue, and
with Damon Payne certainly bothers me too. Now, granted, I am a Jeremiah Beeman fan. It's just you would have had one more established, experienced player that you kind of knew, and so you could kind of the one tech nose tackle compared to like the three tech D tackle. They're two very different positions. They're both interior defensive linemen, but their functions are a lot different. And just knowing that Alabama was kind of shored up as far as the nose, and then you focus on the tackle play. I think that would have really helped Alabama. And Mick, one of the things that I thought was interesting is, when it comes to Alabama's defensive front and the fact that they've kind of struggled as far as the defensive line recruiting. I do like Stephen Momoa. I like Jeremiah Beeman. I like a lot of the guys they've added in recent years, but the star power on that front, James Smith is really the only 5-star Mr. Everything type of player that Alabama has signed on the defensive line in quite some time. Now, they still have a pretty steady stream of good NFL players. But that the Jonathan Allens, the Deron Paynes, those haven't come around in recent years as much. But I've kind of wondered, sometimes it's like the wideouts really helped with wide receiver recruiting, because you recruited several of them, you put them on display, you utilized them correctly, you proved that you could have multiple players at that position and kind of put all of their skill sets on display enough for the NFL where they can move on and have a lot of success and be first-round draft picks. And so it really started to get the ball rolling as far as Alabama's wide receiver recruiting. I wonder if, everybody knows I'm extremely high on James Smith. Everybody knows I'm extremely high on LT Overton if he continues to, if he can just learn to finish. If you can get the kind of impactful play and more of a disruptive style of defense, like go look at Texas A&M. They have recruited the defensive line better than, probably anybody. Now, they were paying a lot of those guys, but you go look at some of the players that are in the NFL draft. They either played for A&M or they, had played previously to 2024 for A&M, a ton of them. But they from a production standpoint, none of them produced at A&M. LT Overton didn't really produce at A&M. Georgia is not really known for their defensive line being ultra productive. It's the way that they play. Nick Saban was the same way. Now you're playing in Kane Wommack's defense that's got a little bit of a different attacking mentality with that true 4-2-5. It's not a 3-4 that kind of transitions to a 4-2-5. And so I wonder if you can get the kind of production that we're hoping and expecting from both James Smith and LT Overton, could they be for Alabama's defensive line as far as kickstarting the defensive line recruiting what the wideouts were for Alabama's receivers? And that's really got me fired up and excited, because I think that's been a major problem. I like Alabama's defensive line. I just don't think they have the disruptors and stuff they've had in the past, but I do think they got a couple of them. 3 starting defensive line spots, 2 of them that were projecting to be starters, James Smith and, LT Overton. And you've got a really good Tim Keenan, who's another one of those, he's not going to have the star power, but he's a steady, really good player that I think is going to play in the NFL for a long time. It's like if they can get the production that they need to out of that defensive front, it can be game-changing as far as Alabama's defense moving forward.
Yeah, well, I hope so. Because there was a time when, the third string defense at Alabama could beat teams. You go back to 2015 and 16, you think about those defenses and their ability to get after the quarterback. And you worry when you see all these guys transfer out. But Bama needs to circle Michigan because Michigan's clearly circled Alabama, clearly. And they've become an issue on and off the field.
They've had a lot of success against Alabama recently. Now, granted, Ivan Taylor, it's gone the other direction a little bit. Keon Sabb, it's worked both directions. But I will say Alabama's typically used to being on the higher side of the 50%. Like if they're battling it out with somebody, they're normally coming out better in a majority of the situations, and that hadn't been the case recently with Michigan. And that kind of holds true for the entire Big Ten against the SEC. Like in recent years, the Big Ten's been getting a lot of these wins. As far as NIL, like Bryce Underwood being stole by Michigan from LSU, Caleb Downs being stole by Ohio State, from Alabama to Ohio State. Then you talk about, the success that Michigan's had, the success that Ohio State's had. It's like, this isn't an Alabama-Michigan specific problem. It's just like one example of where it feels like the Big Ten right now, they're utilizing this NIL stuff probably more than anybody because they knew that while they were still viewed as like the number 2 conference, they weren't carrying the SEC's jockstrap. They knew it. The SEC was so dominant, and during this Wild Wild West era, they're pushing in all their chips. Let's get some momentum going. Let's kind of close this gap a little bit, and then once it gets regulated a little bit more, we'll be on a lot more even playing field with the SEC. And so far, it's worked. So I don't want Bama fans to think this is Bama specific, but it is affecting Alabama certainly.
Guys, we're brought to you by mybookie.ag. Use that promo code NEXTROUND to double your initial deposit. March Madness is right around the corner. Bama in Tennessee, where I'm at right now, in Tennessee tomorrow to take on the Volunteers. This is a huge basketball game. And Alabama's going to have nothing but big basketball games the rest of the regular season. And then, you get into the tournament, it's the tournament. But number 5, Tennessee, number 6, Alabama tomorrow. Mybookie.ag, take advantage of that. And, maybe you feel like Bama's going to go on the road and going to hit some threes in Thompson Bowling Arena. Tennessee's so good there. I'll tell you what, man, I'm excited. I think Thompson Bowling Arena is the nicest gym in the SEC. I love it. I love the way that it just kind of has like it's perfect. They have concerts in there too, but there's suites. It's kind of tall. The lighting's good. Has a good vibe, and over the years, Bama's had some nice wins there.
Yeah. So you got basketball. I don't know, how closely everybody's been following the combine too, but you got that going on, and a lot's riding on that. Like you can get some futures in, and right now I'd be buying some stock in Jahad Campbell if I could, because just the way that he performed yesterday, just a tick under, I think 6'2" and 7/8, so pretty much 6'3", 235 pounds. Ran a 4.52 40, 32.5-inch arms, like, good length. Didn't do the vertical, but the broad jump, I think he had the second best amongst his position group and might be currently the second best amongst everybody. And so, like, just his performance, nothing was surprising about what he did on the field yesterday. Great movement in all the drills, showed off the versatility, doing some pass rush drills, doing some off-ball drills. And this is a guy who we already knew was solidified as a day 1 draft pick, but he's starting to climb draft boards. And some feel like that it's possible that not only could he climb into the top 15, but maybe even the back half of the top 10. I don't know if that'll end up happening, but, give Kane Womack a lot of credit, because I'd wondered, and I put this on Twitter, a few years ago when Alabama played Mississippi State, they used a lot of 3-man fronts, and they took Dallas Turner and they played him off the ball at middle linebacker. It was a very new look. We really didn't see it much after that. But, what that showed me was I liked the fact that they had a guy playing off the ball who they felt comfortable enough doing that with, but they could get in and out of odd and even fronts really easy, because all you had to do was just walk up on the line of scrimmage and you could play edge. And it wasn't a Henry To'oTo'o or a Christian Harris where, like, yeah, they would be asked to do the same, but they're not true edges. Like Dallas Turner was a true edge. Having Jahad Campbell, and the reason I was bringing that up at the time was saying if they could figure out how to do this in the reverse, where you had like a full-time off-ball linebacker who could comfortably play on the edge, not just situationally, it could really provide some flexibility for the defense. And, because they had Dallas Turner and Chris Braswell that following season, you didn't see Jahad Campbell doing that much. But I will give Kane Womack a lot of credit, because he figured out exactly how to unlock his versatility, put him on display, and it's really helped him. And if you're someone, I can't wait to see what he does with Justin Hill, even though he's an edge that can play some off the ball at that Wolf position. I mean, guys like Sincere Johnson, who they're recruiting, who plays mostly off the ball, but I think he's got some edge length and some edge traits. If you're trying to close on a guy like that, that could potentially provide similar versatility. If you're looking at Kane Womack, you can feel pretty confident that he'll put you in a good position as far as the next level and getting drafted. So, just wanted to touch on that for a second. But the combine's going on right now. A lot of stuff happening. Jalen Milroe, they're saying he's probably not going to run the 40 and he's going to throw, which is interesting decision. But I wanted to see him throw more than anything. So I'm looking forward to it. I think he'll be going tomorrow. So that's something for fans to keep an eye on. Yeah,
that is interesting. He is the biggest wild card in this whole draft. And Mel Kiper's even said it. He's like, I got him as like the third or fourth quarterback, but all it takes is one person to fall in love with him. And then, that could change everything. We've seen the best and the worst of Milroe, and you wonder how that's going to translate into the pro career. People love that he's a hard worker, that he shows up on time. What's he like outside of the football building? Seemed like always a good person when I was around him. And, and what's that work ethic going to look like? And how's that going to translate to the NFL? So I'm curious, man. But the fact that he's not going to run, isn't that like his superpowers?
I mean, a lot of guys, Jalen Hurts didn't run. Lamar Jackson didn't run, I don't think. It's kind of one of those things where it's like, I don't know. He kind of views himself as a pocket passer, right? He said that multiple times. So maybe it's like, hey, if I don't run and I throw, maybe I'll be drafted as a pocket passer. I don't know I'm sure his agent's talking to him and there's some method behind the madness, but it's just funny that he is viewed the way that he's viewed as far as his legs being his biggest strength. And there being issues as far as throwing the football. And he's like, well, in this setting where it's like, hey, you would want to highlight your best attributes and kind of minimize what you might struggle with. He's kind of taking the opposite approach. I'm curious to know how that works out for him because he's got a really strong arm. So, it's not like they're going to be asking him to read, coverages and doing all that stuff. So in that type of setting, I mean, Anthony Richardson looked like a superstar doing that stuff. So, maybe Jalen Milroe will look really good. Maybe he can help his draft stock. And then if you you're super fast, but you might not be as fast as maybe you're perceived by some, if he's like a 4.41 kind of guy, but people say, we think you can run in the 4.3s. Maybe you just let them keep thinking you can run in the 4.3s. No one's going to question your speed. So maybe that's the thought process. I have no idea, but I'm looking forward to watching regardless.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. We'll have a great weekend. You got big party planned for this weekend?
Nothing too crazy. Nothing. I'm going to try to stay out of trouble as much as possible. You're the one we got to worry about. You got anything planned?
I went to a Mardi Gras party last night, and then I'm going to a Fat Tuesday Mardi Gras thing in New Orleans. So I'm in Tennessee, obviously at Starbucks, not my home studio. But Sunday, actually Tuesday, next Tuesday, it'll be the first time I've gone to one of these Mardi Gras balls. So that's that, and then I'll still do the show, Clint. I will still do it. I will still work, even though it's Fat Tuesday. That's the kind of guy I am.
We need pictures shared over on the message board. Keep us updated. That is, hey, I'm looking forward to. I want to live vicariously through you this weekend. I want to see the world through the eyes of Mick Gillispie.
I just put a post on there about doing the show from Starbucks in Tennessee, and like people looking at you like got the Floor Bama shirt on, and I'm in Tennessee, and
there's a Michigan fan in there somewhere. I don't know how, but you just know it.
A lot of Tennessee fans. They're all like, "What's this guy doing?" I bought a coffee. I didn't put my name on it, so I was like, "Is this my coffee?" Does that ever happen to you? And you go up, you're like, "What is this?"
People always get my name wrong when I say it fast, and I'm not going to say it on here, but I don't know what it is, but people don't hear it right, and then they don't know what to. They're like, I can't write that on a cup. So I get a lot of Clarks, a lot of Kents. I get a lot of Kent. Cliff. I get a lot of Cliff too, because I think people are just like, it's close enough. We're just not right what I think I heard.
You look like a Cliff. Cliff Lamb.
Cliff Lamb. I mean, honestly.
That's funny. Well, get on the message board with us, guys. You want to know what it's like doing what I do? I'm going to start putting posts up there. I'm going to add pictures too. So, we'll give you the clip notes from the A-Day game. Sure.
Yeah, I'll be in Tuscaloosa for the A-Day game, and we'll have all the stuff on the message board. I'll be providing so many updates, it will be insane. So yeah, that's definitely something that you're going to want to be a part of, because there's a lot of stuff that I'm going to be looking at. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to be looking for beforehand. Then I'm going to follow through. And if anybody wants me to be looking out for something else, I'll do my best to keep my eyes on multiple things, but I'll pick the important things in my mind, and I'll make sure to share it over at covercrimson.com.
All right, guys. Thanks for hanging out with us. Again, mybookie.ag. That's who brings the show to you every day. Like, subscribe, thumbs up, always on the video. Roll Tide. Have a All right, man. It was fun.